It was this nameless valley that Desta's paternal grandmother had come to 40 years earlier to hide from her shame and assuage her fears. Here, where the air was thin and clear like a pane of glass, where the wind streamed out from the eye of a needle lodged between two boulders near the sky, where the sun rose late and set early and never got hot, where life came in colors of the rainbow, where people possessed so little materially, yet were contented as if they had everything in the world, where God reigned supreme and his believers pretended devotion but still did ungodly things, such as making promises to children they never meant to fulfill. Desta's world, with the mountains for walls and the sky for a roof, it was his universe. East was separated from west by the Davila River. Slicing the valley floor as it snaked south to north, it was fed by rivulets that came down the sides of the mountains. Desta lived with his parents, a brother and sister, the fourth and sixth youngest of his 6 siblings, along with 3 horses, 3 mukit goats, a dozen chickens, a dog and a cat, all in a single circular structure made of wood and earth and topped by a conical roof of bamboo and grass. Looking back, it was exactly 7 years earlier on a frosty Friday morning with the first guttural calls of the colobus monkeys from the forest, before the first fleeting rays of the sun struck the peak above their home, that Desta pushed from his mother's belly. It was as if he had timed his exit for the sunlight that would soon filter through the cracks in the walls below his parents' high earthen bed. At this time of the year, the sun rose near the lowest point of the cup-shaped gap in the eastern mountains on the right slope.
I had been in labor since midnight. I expected the worst.
So did Abraham and the rest of the family. The new baby's arrival had not been expected for another 2 months.
Preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best, I went when dawn barely broke and returned with a root of a secret plant to promote the baby's fast delivery. The plant's potency was by association rather than by direct contact with the patient. So I placed it in the opening through which the horses' manure was removed from their stalls to the right of the entrance.
Abraham now sat next to his wife, not far from the fireplace in the center of their living quarters. Some of the family sat by the fire, heads down, as if sad that their Christmas would be marred. Others hovered around the mother, encouraging her to push. As fortune would have it, not long after their father placed the medicinal plant, there arrived a fist-sized, squirming baby, much to the glee of the family. It was in early June, at the time of the year when the sun rose nearly as high as it could go on the right slope of the gap in the eastern mountains, when Ainat and Abraham had conceived Desta. That was the beginning of the rainy season and a frantic time for farm workers. For Ainat, besides the exertion of grinding grains, preparing food, fetching water from the creek, washing clothes, the other part of the day, when she had respite from her domestic chores, she helped on the farm for an hour or two. When her mind was so preoccupied with work, she often forgot to feed herself and the baby inside her. When she did remember to eat, she nibbled on injera, flat, spongy bread made from teff, a grain a quarter the size of a riceberry, with pea sauce, the staple food of the family for breakfast, lunch and dinner. The other grains, barley and rye, were used to make dabo or tella. These foods, together with teff, were the only foods consumed daily in some form. There were no vegetables to speak of, except for potatoes and goman, collard green, that appeared on the family's plate during the rainy season. In those wet months they had plenty of collard green that was chopped, cooked and served after being mixed with a spiced butter and sometimes ground flax seeds. This provided the only colour in their meals. After dinner, the family discussed the name they should give the new baby. Ainat spoke up.
Let's call him Emmanuel, for the day of the Christ child.
Others proposed different names, Habtamu, Adisu and Mulat. Abraham sat quietly while the others were rattling off their choices.
Desta, happiness, is a fitting name.
When Ainat bridled at this, Abraham continued.
I think it would be appropriate because one, This is a very happy time for our country. The Italians are long gone, and your father has won medals for warfront deeds against the invaders. And our Negus king, God bless him, is ruling the country peacefully. 2, here at home, everything is good with us. Our crops are growing abundantly, our animals are thriving, and we have all this land to prosper and flourish.
Abraham then pointed to the infant and added,
This boy is the firstborn in this place. You know, after I returned from the Italian War, I had an epiphany. I saw that some of you boys had grown to be strapping men since the last visit from the war front. Then I studied the vast forested flanks of the Western Mountains. Knowing that I would soon need more land for my growing family, I crossed the Davola River and claimed 700 acres of virgin land separated by deep running creeks.
That is a wonderful story, and those are wonderful reasons to call our son Desta. But I'm not so sure I like that name.
But there is more. The boy arrived on Christmas Day, the day when we all are here happily gathered in celebration. What is more, we had feared a miscarriage last night when Einat went into labour. Instead, we have a healthy-looking baby, so we all should be happy. Desta will be his name.
The next 7 years of Desta's life were not an improvement over life in his mother's womb, especially when it came to nourishment. But in his new world, which still felt like a womb, he had freedom. He no longer bore his mother's daily trials and tribulations, and he could move freely in open space. In Ayanat's mind, the unanswered question was why Desta turned out a boy instead of a girl. After 4 boys born in a row, all Ayanat wanted was more girls. She already had 2 and hoped for 2 more if Providence was good to her.
Desta woke on his 7th birthday, Saturday, January 7th, more confused and frustrated than when he had gone to bed the night before.
The fallow land behind his parents' home was Desta's refuge. The vervet and colobus monkeys and the rich verdure on either side of the creek at the bottom of the hill had always brought him happiness. He liked to be with his sister Hibist whenever he felt down, but Hibist was busy helping her mother. He slipped out without his dog and dashed through the shade bushes and across the sloping earth. When he came to a clearing, he stopped and studied the view. The mid-morning sun had made everything bright and pleasant to behold. He could see no monkeys in the trees near the property. The place was hushed, as if all the animals of the forest were observing the holiday. Across the southern creek up on the grade, Desta could see the rickety shed his father had built years ago in the middle of the forest, staking his claim to the land. This broad and descending land down to the valley floor had been earmarked for Asijed and Damtu, Desta's older brothers. A fortnight ago he had heard his brothers discuss how they would divide it up. Desta could see now why Damtu wanted it split lengthwise. That way each would get 50% of both the flat and steep terrain. Asijed had insisted on splitting the land crosswise and drawing a lottery to see who would take which piece. As Desta stared at the lush foliage, though, he wondered how much of the forest would remain once his brothers cut the trees down and converted the land into farms like his father had done on this side of the creek. While standing there contemplating his brother's dreams, which he knew would become a reality, he thought of his own unfulfilled dreams, dreams he had thought would be within his grasp after his 7th birthday, now receding from him like a mirage. And then there were those damning things his mother and Damtu used to say about him when he was little. Although Desta couldn't hear or talk for the first year of his life, he could hear and speak like a grown-up after his 2nd birthday. People flocked from far and wide to see and hear him talk.
Oh, he is just possessed by Satan. Satan.
He is just a mistake, that's all.
No, he is just an unusual boy who has a remarkable gift for words. Who knows what else?
The women would say in unison, tapping their chests.
What else could cause a baby to talk like this? Oh my, oh my.
The men just gazed and shook their heads. But after they all left, Desta remembered feeling empty and strange. The more he felt that way, the more withdrawn he became, until finally his father put a stop to the visitors. A few years later, Desta thought the reason Damtu enjoyed ridiculing him was probably because he didn't have Desta's verbal gifts. Damtu must have felt inferior to his little brother. The only way he could preserve his own self-worth was by belittling him. The revelation consoled Desta. The hole he was digging had gotten deeper and longer, like a small trench. He now began to stab and knock the soil from its walls. He refocused his thoughts. Over time, he felt less important than his siblings. Damtu would remind Desta that he was not his equal because he didn't stay the 9 months in womb, as if saying that Desta were not a full human being. Desta remembered asking his mother if she could put him back in her womb so he could stay there 2 more months. When she told him she couldn't, he felt miserable. Later, his big brother even told Desta his desire to go to the mountain proved that he was not normal. When Desta thought about all these things, his isolation and now his unfulfilled dream, his tears began to overflow. He tipped his head and they fell directly into the trench he was digging, soaking the soil. He heard a noise like someone walking across dry leaves or snapping a twig. He lifted his tear-streaked face to look. A white silhouette of a person flashed before him and vanished.